be yourself. Don't try and be someone else. Like, tell your own story, do the thing that you think is cool, and don't have that barometer inside of you that's like, wait, but like, what will they? No, it's not about they, it's about you.
Some say you have to choose between being the perfect professional woman or being the bad girl. But we're here to tell you can be both. I'm Rachna Patel.
And I'm Ebony Lukovitz. And this is A Bad Girl's Guide to Business, a podcast for bad bitches who want to create lives they love and incredible businesses. Welcome back to the final episode of season 1 of A Bad Girl's Guide to Business. And baddies, we have an absolutely incredible guest joining us today. You're going to love her and learn so much from her journey. We are joined by Sophia Altholz. She is an artist, designer, and the founder of Fuega Lab, a sneaker customization studio in Mexico City. Sophia grew up in Manhattan and Israel and today lives in Mexico. In her previous life, she worked on brand partnerships and grew up with a love of drawing and doodling on shoes. She created a pair of customized sneakers for her boss and his team, and it changed the course of her life. Today, she makes customized sneakers, and her shoes have been worn by celebrities like Martha Stewart and Gary Vaynerchuk. Fuega regularly collaborates with massive brands like Coach, Smeg, Chase Bank, Netflix, Spotify, and many more. And we're going to dive into today how Sophia attracts those partnerships and how you can too. She's also going to talk about how she was recently featured on Shark Tank Mexico. We'll go behind that process and really some important decisions Sophia made during that journey, which you will also be inspired by. Sophia is the definition of a baddie who is blazing her own trail, and we are so excited to have her on the show today. Sophia, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm just so thrilled to be here. I love looking at your face and knowing new faces. And I'm just so excited to dive in and open book policy. I'm excited to discuss.
Love it.
I love it.
I know. We share it all here. And I'm so excited to share how we met because it is so ridiculous. It's such a good story.
So insane. It's so crazy. I believe it was 2021 or 2022. I forgot what month, but I was in Oaxaca, Mexico, and I was looking at venues for my wedding.
Your wedding.
With my husband. And I remember I was like walking on the street. I just had come from like a catastrophic tasting. It was like,
oh, I didn't know it was bad.
Yeah, we ended up switching venues, switching wedding planners, switching catering. Like, you caught me in a moment that was like a critical moment. And I remember I was wearing a hat that I got in Oaxaca from this amazing hat creator, like, I guess it was like a store hat little factory in Oaxaca. And I remember, I think it was Adam that came up to me and was like, hey, like, I love your hat. Like, where did you get your hat? And I was like, oh, there's this store, Alberly. It's like right around the corner. And we start talking. And then he's like, are you Jewish? Like, where are you from? Like, cause I see the Jewish star. And I'm like, yeah, we're Jewish. We're looking to get married here. He's like, oh, and we all start talking and we like create a group chat and stay in touch on Instagram. And then we like run into each other at Burning Man, and we were together that whole Friday. And I think, what I like about that story of ours is very similar to the story I have with my husband, which is like, sometimes spontaneity and like whispers of magic in the air kind of like pop out at you. And even if it's random, even if the context is like so not fitting to like where you're at, if you listen to those things that show themselves to you and like kind of go with the flow of like a natural energy you might have with a person or a story or a context, it ends up, I think, being very meaningful. And I feel like we have this group chat. We're in touch over months, and you're growing your family and you guys are married, and it's just so beautiful to witness. I mean, it really is.
Yeah, it's really nice. I love how we randomly met on the street in Oaxaca. And I've got to give a shout out to my amazing husband, Adam, who was like,
we are going to friend you. Like he came on to you guys so hard. It was like, we are going to be friends whether you like it or not. And just constantly sends you guys like life updates. And I know that we're like cheering for each other, from our like corners of the globe. And, you know, when Rach and I started this podcast, it only hit me a few weeks ago. I was like, Sophia, we need to get her on the pod because you are an incredible businesswoman and creative who is building a brand and working with all these amazing companies. And so I'm so excited to dive into it today because I know that you have a lot to share and our listeners can learn a lot from you and just like how you have blazed this trail and how you go about working with all these really big brands and creating these opportunities for yourself. So I want to maybe start with your upbringing because you grew up in Manhattan, between Manhattan and Israel, and you now live in Mexico City. So you tell us about those experiences and how they've informed who you are and also your art.
Absolutely. So I am, you know, full American. I was a New York City kid. I grew up in New York City. I had some years where I lived kind of in the suburbs, but mainly I was a New York City kid. And then when I was age 11, my parents kind of picked up and we all moved to Israel, to Jerusalem. I also grew up in a little bit more of a religious environment, Jewishly religious. So we were kind of like, you know, no electricity on Saturdays for, you know, Shabbat. And we were going to, you know, religious schools. And my friends and friend group were kind of from a more conservative background. So I was kind of picked up with my family at 11 years old, thrown into Jerusalem. And that was actually also during the second Intifada. So there was some kind of tough tension moments there at the time. But my dad's brother was living in Israel at the time. So we wanted to be close to that side of the family. We wanted to also kind of take a year off and just disconnect because I think, you know, the US obviously has been in many transitional phases. And I think my parents were very keen on having us have like a less materialistic kind of upbringing at some point during our critical years, you know? So we ended up extending each year. So I ended up staying between age 11 and 15 for 3.5 years. So I was going to my middle school. Like my middle school experience was in Israel, in Jerusalem. And, you know, I was forced to, at age 11, go to this school where there was like 2 English speakers. So I had to like learn Hebrew. I had to make friends. I had to gain this kind of confidence and start from scratch. And, I mean, I never struggled socially, but definitely in Israel, in Jerusalem during those years, I was kind of put into it was like kind of a rough school, I think, a little bit. And there was definitely intense like bullying and, you know, whenever something kind of is thrown into this algorithm of like, you know, new American, redheaded, you know, freckled kid. I mean, yeah, I was very different. I was very creative, very different. And it was, I think, critical to who I am today. And then I came back to New York City, around 15 with my family. We moved back to the Upper West Side. And then, every summer I was going back to a camp on a kibbutz in the north. And I was doing that for about 7 years. And then I also took a year off of college, because I had started my kind of college career at Northeastern, which is a great school. But I think being a city kid in Boston, it was a little bit unimpressive to me. Like I was struggling with Boston. So I wanted to just take a year off. I applied to Bezalel, which is the art school in Jerusalem. And I studied painting and visual communication for 1.5 years during my like college time. And that was so interestingly, you know, my like college dorm was the bomb shelter. And, my friends were from all over the world. We were in this like international program and I was learning a lot about myself as an American, as a Jewish person, but also as a creator, because I wasn't quite sure. I was kind of dabbling in between, you know, like, do I study graphic design that will pay the bills, or am I trying to, you know, dive into my artistic self and like hope for the best? And I think after that year in Jerusalem at Bezalel, I realized that I needed to be in New York. I'm a creative person and I want to be in the best city for that. So I applied to a bunch of different schools. I got a merit scholarship at Pratt Institute. So I ended up submitting myself to Pratt and I studied digital art and interactive media with a minor in philosophy. And I just loved it. So I think throughout my kind of development phases of these different cultures, of kind of dabbling in between, you know, art and design, but like, how am I going to pay the bills? Because I'm like very driven and ambitious. You know, I was always kind of thinking, you know, where is this going to go? Like, I need to be pragmatic. I need to kind of be smart. Because I wanted to live a good life. I also am very passionate about, you know, working, making my own way. My parents, as soon as, you know, you finish college, it was like, all right, good luck. So, you know, I was very driven to make that creative thing work. And I mean, this is kind of just a backbone to all of this, but I was always super interested in, I always played basketball. That was something that was like a big part of my like high school, adolescence, and also a little bit of college, but I kind of didn't go that route. So I was always playing basketball and like really into this like urban style, Jordan 1s, Michael Jordan, you know, Madison Square Garden, the Knicks, the Nets. You know, my dad's from Brooklyn. I was living in Brooklyn and at Pratt, but I was like, you know, my parents lived in Manhattan. So I just had a lot of this kind of like stylish inspiration behind sports as I was learning about how to be a self-sufficient creative person in a very expensive city.
Wow. It's amazing to see how all these different threads come together. You know, like it makes sense now with everything that you're doing at Fuega.
Yeah, it does. I mean, and it's so funny because, you know those people in your community or like your high school or, you know, your grad school or college, you know, that guy that's like, oh, he's the co-founder of this, you know, really cool, successful app, or, oh no, that one is the founder of, you know, what, or that's the buyer at that company, or, you know, oh, they're killing it, or they just sold their company. And you hear these like success stories. And I'm not saying that I don't want to put this like classic, like, you know, fountainhead, separation where I'm doing things for the external versus the internal. And I'll get to the internal in a second, but I was always very inspired by stories and people. And it was the way that I connected to success. It wasn't like looking at a bank account and saying, ooh, I want $1 million in my bank account by the age of X. It was more so like, wow, you know, look at, for example, I remember listening to a podcast about the founder of Canva, who like, I think she's also Australian, right?
She's an Australian woman, yeah.
Yeah. And I remember listening and saying, you know, wow, she started this like kind of yearbook program, platform thingy with her boyfriend. And she was so humble about it. So I remember just listening to that and being like, wow, like it started as this like little project. And then they built it up. They begged a few people, had some bad stories. They had some bad moments. They were up, they were down. And it's worth over, I mean, it's multiple billions of dollars at this point. And it's like the foundation to a lot of businesses. And I respect the shit out of those stories. So I was always just, I don't know if I want to say I was like, you know, jealous. That's not the word. I was envious. I was aspirationally just so inspired by people's success stories and how people get so fucking clever in making their own buck and making their own story and making their own company. And that was something that I was always just constantly striving to do, but I wasn't sure how to do it. Cause I was like, okay, I'm creative. I know how to paint. I know how to draw. I'm like very kind of nifty and like, digital designy, but I'm not a traditional designer, but I'm also not an artist, but I'm not a business person, but I like sneakers. I'm into urban street style. Virgil Abloh is like one of my icons, but like I'm not him either. So like where do I go? What do I do? What am I? What am
So,
I?
so let's talk about that a little bit more. Thank you so much for sharing everything that you shared. It was really, really insightful, particularly about where you grew up, living in multiple places. That's something I've done, it's something Ebony's done. And so I think that it really does help kind of take everything you've done and translate into your career. So right now you're the founder of Fuega Labs and an incredible sneaker artist. We love your work. You're so talented. Can you break down what your work currently consists of? Like, just give us a breakdown day to day. How are you doing this?
So, I mean, first of all, Fuega Lab is an interactive studio space. So it's a physical space that's about a 10-minute walk from where I live here in Mexico City, in Condesa. And it is a creative hub where we offer high-end sneaker personalization experiences. Not only is it just kind of these like workshop wine and paint night style events, but it's a movement and it's a way of thinking and it's a way of educating and it's a way of calming that I believe as a founder that it is going to, I know it's going to penetrate the retail industry, the educational industry, and the wellness industry in a way that I think we have no idea.
One of the things that amazes me about you is just all these incredible partnerships that you regularly secure and these brands that you work with. And I think, in one of our conversations, it may have even been at Burning Man, I can't remember, but I asked you, I was like, how are you doing this? And the thing that struck with me was like, you need to advocate for yourself, right? And so I want to dive into your transition to working for yourself, how you've monetized your passion and your creativity, because I know that's a really big theme. But maybe let's just talk about how you go about getting all these partnerships and working with all these amazing brands.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You mentioned Nike, Fiva, and Airbnb, like becoming like a super host for them. Let's dive into those because this is the type of stuff that the baddies actually really want to hear. Like, how do they get themselves in front of these amazing corporations, these brands? Because it's about generating more revenue in your business. And these are great paths and ways that you're doing it. So let's talk about those specifically.
Absolutely. So I would say, I can give you some. So some of the brands. I remember when I was starting Fuega, I started renting this studio space here, took some photos, made a bunch of drawings of what it was going to be. But this concept is like a new concept. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, wine and paint, like for a business, but it's sneakers. But how do you do that? And I have a few kind of competitors. There's Golden Goose and there's Shoe Surgeon and there's Major Waves and there's Angel Lust and there's a lot of other people that do similar kind of things. But I was really looking to create a space where people feel like they're the influencer, Like sometimes you'd see those like I don't know, like Amex dinner featuring Spotify. And it's this like long dinner with like logos everywhere and this like insane gift box from like Caudalie. And you get this like mask. And, I wanted people to feel like they can be the influencer too and not having to like get invited or have 100K minimum of followers. So I have this whole new concept of a business. I'm very gung-ho about it. I'm articulate. I'm new to Mexico. I'm from New York. And I remember wanting to, I put in all my money, my savings, because I had a previous creative director role at this Chinese kind of fashion company. So I had saved up some money. I put all my money into this idea. I was ready to do it. And I didn't have any more money and I needed a fridge. I needed a fridge because we were doing experiences and we were going to have like, drinks and I didn't have any more money. Like I literally didn't have, or I could have used credit maybe, but I don't know. And fridges are expensive. Like it's not, if you want like a cool fridge, I mean, whatever, $1,000, $2,000 up to thousands of dollars. But I was just looking for a fridge and I had no more money. So I was looking into fridges. First, I was going to get like the cheapest one and then figure it out. But I was like, you know what? I want one of those like pretty fridges. So I started looking into brands, and I mean, who are the pretty fridges that come to mind?
Smeg is the prettiest of the fridges.
I mean, Smeg does a lot of things well, but they certainly do fridges well. So I looked into Smeg, and I noticed that they had this like new showroom in Mexico City, and they have a lot of their fridges there. I looked at the prices, it's like anywhere from 50 to 70,000 pesos, which is like $2,000 to $3,000. Didn't have it. So I said, you know what? I remember that I've seen Smegs like painted on, like they have, I'm going to put together a pitch deck and see like if it works. So I put together, about me as a founder, about Fuega as a potential business about to start. Nothing existed yet. I put together some photos, some videos. I did like a little mock photo in Photoshop of like a neon Smeg being painted in the style of like my background here, like a Fuega style. And I basically started like stalking the brand and seeing like who's the guy in charge. So I get the guy in charge is this like Italian guy who brought it to Mexico on LinkedIn. I connect with him, and then I start looking into like the director of marketing, the director of social media, and no one is really giving me a straight answer. I message them on Instagram. Thanks for reaching out, like an automatic message. And then they say something like, you can reach out to Fernanda or something, if you want to get in touch. Like a very generic, but like, here's the name. I've been waiting weeks for a reply. I've been hunting these people down. I'm going to go to the showroom with my computer, and I am going to hope for the best. Going to battle. I would love to talk to Fernanda. And she's like, oh, sounds cool. Let me like get Fernanda. So Fernanda comes and she's like, hi, who are you? And I'm like, hi, I know this is super random. I love Smeg as a brand. I've been in touch with, and I found the guy who's the director, I think something Michel. I would love to talk to you about a potential partnership. I think it would be an amazing collaboration if you have just 5 minutes of your time. And she's like, yeah, hold on. Like, let's go in the conference room. Like, hold on. So she like goes upstairs. She brings down the head of sales, the head of brand, the CFO, and her sitting down in front of my presentation. And I was like, okay, great. So I basically start, presenting on my computer, and I made the story as if it was already happening. Like they were going to give me a fridge and I was going to customize it. I was going to give them an amazing opportunity to have really authentic content. And it was about supporting a local female started business, but also, enriching Mexico City and their local brands. And, this was a way for me to just really take a leap of faith, but make something really cool. Like it was just so cool, this whole thing. And basically within that week, they loved the idea. Within that week, they ended up sending me a brand new free fridge. I got, friends of friends hired for some content. We did some interviews. I made it. And basically that was like our partnership. And we created this long going kind of relationship with Smeg, for different activations and projects. And so I'm going to say in terms of like, how do you land these brands? Right. I would say you need a tool in which to sell. So like a good pitch deck or a good design or a good concept. You then need, historical success with previous brands. So I was able to utilize, as an artist that I've worked with Nike and Coach and Foot Locker and whatever. So that was kind of like, oh, if they're doing it, we could do it. 3, I would say, these big brands right now, they're so monstrous and big, and it's all about expansion and growth. But when they have someone who's coming to them to their doorstep and saying, I'm going to do all the work, I'm going to do all the content, I'm going to do all the meaningfulness, all the storytelling, and the only thing I need is for you to give me this one product.
Give me the fridge.
Like, just give me the fridge. It's a no-brainer.
No-brainer.
And I know what it's like to be working on the in-house side of, okay, we have Chase Bank, and we need to look at artists. We need to find, it's like discovering this is also a big job. So if I can just come to them, it's like avoiding the broker's fee. It's like just going straight to the client and saying, hey, I have what you need. You have what I need. Let's exchange and see if it works. Obviously, there's different levels of risk. I would say also in terms of getting money versus product, there's a very different conversation that needs to be had. But I mean, I love brand partnerships. It's what makes my company so successful, I think. And I believe, when I look at a Nike or a Golden Goose, it's like they start with the brand and then they have different activations of customization as kind of a part 2 or part 3. Whereas my brand is first focusing on the customization and the brand is second. So the canvas that you might choose, Rosh, to come to one of the workshops is maybe a Reebok low top white leather silhouette. Whereas Ebony, you might want, a high top Nike Dunk. So it's the brand second, it's the experience and the customization first. I hope that answered your question.
It really did.
Awesome.
That's such a great story. That Smeg story, I think what's really important for the baddies out there is, get yourself out there, get in front of people, and don't be afraid to go in and ask for the time. I think that is so useful. And kudos to you. I'm so glad it paid off. I'm so happy you got your amazing fridge. What color is it? Which color did you pick?
It was great. They sent me, it was like new, but someone had returned it. It had a dent that I needed to see with a magnifying glass. It was tiny. Yeah. It was like new. They sent it to me in a light blue, baby blue. I ended up getting my carpenter to paint it all neon yellow. And then I did all of the designing work.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That makes me so happy for you. That's one great story of just putting yourself out there, hustling and getting exactly what you need. So congratulations.
Thank you. And, that wasn't the only time that has worked for me. I mean, I've done that with, I reached out to Danny Ocean on Instagram, who's this like amazing reggaeton artist. And I was like, I love your work. I love your album. Like, please let me make you sneakers. And he answered and he's like, I'd love to. And I ended up, 6 months later making him sneakers based on all of his, songs that helped me learn Spanish. And he gave me a private concert while he was practicing for this like show. It was it was one of the best days of my life. And then again, with the brands, it's like maybe not influencer marketing success, but also with the brands. I did that also with the Taiwanese, bubble tea company called Gongcha, where I noticed that they have, at the time they had like 70 pop-up stores in Mexico, and people here in Mexico love bubble tea.
Oh, they adore it. Yeah.
Like it's like a thing here, and they have it in New York. They have it all over the world. It's a huge company. And I noticed that they came to Mexico, and I was looking into the director of who brought it to Mexico. And I think it was a woman. And then I looked into all the other people of, who's behind all these decisions. And I wrote to info@gongcha.com. And I was like, hi, my name is Sophia. I have an amazing project. I love Gongcha. I think it is such a meaningful brand. I think there's so much potential. And if we partner up, I think we can really add value to each other. I was looking up, the female person that behind this. I also love the history of this person. Here's some ideas I had. Like, I'd love to talk to a director of marketing. Please let me know. And they got back to me within 2 weeks. They're like, we love this idea. Let's get on a call. And Oswaldo is now, a year we've been working together. They love working with us. We love working with them. We have an exclusive flavor that we have at Fuega. And we get, a certain amount of product per week and per month to give to our clientele, our participants in the workshop. And yeah, that was just through info at. So even if you're not physically there, I think there's ways to create meaning even through the email.
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
That's great. And are these all kind of value exchanges that you're doing with other brands, or are they then turning into paid clients? So you're doing a value exchange to start with? How does it work?
That's a great question. I'm still navigating how to, well, okay, let me, so these are product exchanges that I'm talking about, but it's also, valuable marketing and brand use, and we get to use their logo on our website and things like that. So there's a lot more value that goes beyond just the product. There's like more to it. But in terms of actual money, we haven't yet exchanged, let's say, actual cash for services yet. But we have other brands that, I don't know, like for example, we had like Nike, for example, or no, actually, I'll go into Spotify. So Spotify came to us because they wanted to gift a high-end experience to their best clients that publish their brands on Spotify media platforms. So we were in negotiations, and we ended up closing like a 12 workshop program where we did this over a span of like 3 months, where we did different evenings where Spotify sent their best clients. It was like, the director of marketing from L'Oreal or Walmart or Modelo, or, people that also have like an eye and a decision-making voice in that world of branding, or partnerships rather. And it was called Beats and Personalization. And so Spotify is like all about creating now new algorithms to personalize, your audio experience. And they wanted to showcase some of their new features. So we have this, big screen TV in Fuega, and you can do like presentations before the workshop. And that was a paid partnership. It wasn't, I wouldn't call it a partnership. It was a paid service. We offered a service, but it was from a brand that I hope to partner with further. And that basically kind of triggered my appetite to create a different type of a business model with brands, where instead of just doing one-off events, we can create monthly retainers. So we can almost like an investment to your employees. So instead of, like, oh, like Fuega, can we do this one event? It's like, no. Every month, Google Latin America has a workshop for a raffle of their employees. They get to come and design their own sneakers. And that's like, a fixed fee per month. And I think obviously, we know that membership and retainers are like a more sustainable business, and it gives you a lot more cushion. So I'm hoping to do something like that. Another thing is, I think when I was on Shark Tank, that opened a ton of credibility. It was like street cred. It was like, oh, you were on Shark Tank. We would love to talk to you about a partnership. But before, it wasn't like that,
Mm-hmm.
So I think like, for example, getting on Fever, it was through a producer that I met on Shark Tank who said to me, oh, I can totally see your studio being on Fever. And I was like, I'm dying to get on Fever. Do you know someone? And he's like, let me see. We ended up discussing, and he sent me the contact, and we got in touch, and then Airbnb Experience also was like through a friend. And I've been trying to get in touch with them for months. And then a friend of mine was like, hey, someone's going to reach out. I'm like, yes. So
it's awesome.
That's wonderful.
The thing that I love about your story, Soph, is like, it's so clear that you've just created all these opportunities for yourself by literally knocking on doors, reaching out to people. And that's something that we really talk about a lot here and encourage our listeners to do, which is create opportunities for themselves. And it is clear that all these partnerships allow you to monetize Fuega and have all these people working for you. And, you know, I think a lot of women like tend to closet and hide their ambition and their desire to be successful. And I love that you are so open in your ambition and do want to create like a really incredible, thriving, successful brand. So I'm like really inspired by our conversation, and I want to hear about how this Shark Tank opportunity came up, because that is just like mind blowing. And I understand that you also got funded, like one of the sharks invested in you, you partnered with them. So tell us about how that came about and what that entire experience was like for you.
Yeah. So Shark Tank, I've been using a digital agency to do marketing and paid media for Fuega. And it was the most affordable one that I could afford at the time. I was just kind of like putting random dollars behind random posts, and I wasn't actually connecting it to like Facebook Business Manager. And I needed someone to just like hand off. So as soon as I started promoting the brand in a more strategic and digital way, it got in front of a lot more eyes that were interested in this type of a thing, right? And then we ended up getting on a call, and the vibe that I got from this call was that this producer was pitching me. I was not pitching anyone. He wanted me on the show. Like, I felt like I was just, leaning back and listening. And he was like, no, and I think it's amazing because like you could do it and it's like super cool and Fuega on the branding. And I was like, listen, I'm down. But I think in business, with these types of things, you can't really get your hopes up every time something like, because there's so much movement now in social media and digital. And so I said, you know what? I'm down. I was just super calm about it. I was super just like chill. Didn't really mention it to a lot of people. And I really said, you know what? I'll believe it when I see it. So we're in touch over emails. I like signed my life away to Sony, and basically, they're like, okay, we're kind of in the end. You have to really hurry this up because we need to make sure that your brand is registered, that you have a Mexican visa, that one of the partners of the brand is Mexican. And my husband has a small percentage because he helped me build the company, like with the government and stuff. And basically, I was eligible. Like they were like, okay, great. So we'll let you know. You just have to like prepare your pitch. And then we'll tell you what day, a few days before your film day will be, starting mid-April. And I was like, what? Okay, sure. So obviously I go into a deep dive. I'm looking at like every Mexico Shark Tank episode. What are the amounts that people are asking for? What are the percentages that they're, giving out? What stage, is the brand at? How do they do their pitch? How do they make it engaging?
Right.
I had to do this all in Spanish. I was only operating my brand at that point for like 4 or 5 months. So I needed to get like my numbers in order. I needed to get my margins in order.
It's like a serious business decision, right? Because these sharks are like investing in your company. It's like, cool, it's reality TV, but it's also like actual, like a business decision.
It's a business decision, and it's a numbers game, and it's also acting, and it's like likability, but it's Spanish. Also like all in Spanish.
Wow.
And that's the rule, wild. And it's always a risk, because once you go in front of millions of people like that, people are going to try and copy you. People are going to see that you're successful. Right. People are going to try and like register your name. So they do all these precautions. And like, I also was working with my friend who's a lawyer to like protect me in certain things. So that was also taken care of, for the most part. But, it was a huge undertaking. So on top of like managing your business, it's like, okay, now I need to like hire a finance person to like get this all in order for me. Then I need to create a pitch that's interesting and engaging and grammatically correct. And then they have a rule on Shark Tank where you're not allowed to present any sort of presentation. You're not allowed to have any written material. Everything is memory. Wow. So, I got the call, hey, Soph, all right, so we're going to pick you up at 6 a.m., April 16th, and you're not allowed to bring anything, you have to approve everything with the production team. And I was in touch with maybe like 30 people from the Shark Tank production team of like, Hola, Sophia, I'm in charge of transport. Hola, Sophia, I'm in charge of logistics. Hola, Sophia, and it was like, reviewing my scripts with everyone, having like a kind of an advisor to help me through the process. So yeah, it was intense. It was like a real big accomplishment that I always looked up to the people on Shark Tank being like, wow, I hope one day I can be able to do that. So anyways, and on top of that, which I didn't mention from before, but it was very important for me to personally understand each of the sharks on like a level that was like knowing, where their success comes from, what they do, where they come from, like their vibe. And I actually made each of them custom sneakers that were inspired by them. So I had this like kind of really special gift that I was able to give them on the show. And each of the designs were obviously very inspired by them. So I had to do kind of like a stock. Like I needed to like look into their Instagram. What colors do they wear? Where do they travel? What kind of sneakers do they wear and stuff? So I was like living and breathing Shark Tank until I was on the show. And I mean, I couldn't sleep that night. And, I got picked up by this like, van with this other, entrepreneur in the van. And we were going to the studios in the south of the city in Mexico. And it was a dream. It was like you go on set. It's like, lots of people, you go to wardrobe, you go to the outfits, and they thought they lost my outfit. I was like freaking out. And anyways, I just remember that moment where I'm, practicing my pitch in this room and we're signing our life away, more documents. It was also the first day of filming. So they always say that the first day of filming these long productions is a little bit chaotic more chaotic than usual. And I mean, they said, yep, they got the walkie talkie. They're like, Fuega in 5. And I'm like, so anyways, I get up there, I do my pitch. Hola, tiburones. Mi nombre es Sofía. Soy una artista de tenis de Nueva York, pero chilanga en mi corazón. And it was very important for me to bring in some humor, and likability. And sometimes when I get nervous, I forget to smile. So anyways, yeah, I mean, I did my pitch. Thank God I didn't make any mistakes. And I presented the sneakers and they all loved their sneakers. I made some mistakes in my responses because I was mixing up some numbers in my head and the language. And, but in the end, all of them basically declined except for the shark that I wanted from the start, who's a woman. Her name is Carla Berman. She's also a Jewish woman from the community. And she's also, I mean, brilliant. She went to Harvard Business School. She worked at McKinsey. She is just a very top-notch, woman, very, very self-made woman. And she said a few things that were really interesting. She's like, I really like that people are coming to your place and they're essentially just sitting in your spot and like using your paints. So like clearly you're doing something really well that they're paying this amount to use these paints. And it clearly sparked an interest in her. So, she made me an offer. And since the show, we've been in touch. We've had a few meetings. My finances in the very beginning were a mess. And then I kind of sent her a whole other slew of finances that, were much more, buttoned up. And her and I both agreed. The truth is, as you all know now, I didn't go on the show for money. I didn't need money. So there's a key difference. And I think it was a great luxury I had in that I didn't need it. So I went for the marketing. I went for the publicity. So after Carla and I kind of, sat down a few times and analyzed numbers and, our goals for Fuega, she made it very clear that she's very interested in like remaining very close and being a part of the story, but that investing right now just might not be what I'm looking for. And I actually said the same thing to her. I said, I'm not looking for money, right now because I don't have this like clear growth plan yet. And the truth is I think when you start your own business, that's your passion project and it's doing so well and you're your own boss. Once you accept, outside money, you have a new boss, like the new sheriff is in town. So I think that for me, that was something I don't know if I was willing to give up so quickly just yet, but her and I are still very much in touch. We are very much, like in good vibes with one another. And I actually said to her, I'm like, I don't want money right now, but I do want your advisory and your help. And I think that she could use a lot of help with her like public image and her brand partnerships. So I actually suggested to her, I'm like, Carla, why don't we do this like kind of sweat equity exchange where like I help you with your image and you help me with like my finance and growth and we can complement each other. So we're now in the process of seeing what that can look like. The ball is now in my court. Like I need to see what that can look like, but that's another example of like not being intimidated by someone, who's more ahead of you, because there's always ways to have a push and pull, it's like, and I'm someone who I never really feel comfortable with just like receiving without giving. So I was, like I was very much like, let me help you so that you can help me and we can feel good about this instead of you just having this like kind of annoying or not annoying, but just like a chore of like, oh, another Shark Tank person, entrepreneur that's like looking for my guidance. It's like I really wanted it to be a self-sufficient and kind of healthy two-way relationship. So yeah.
That's wonderful.
Awesome. Yeah,
that's really great.
I also just want to say as well, like we talk about partnerships here on the show, and like entering into a partnership or asking for investment, it should be a conscious decision. Like, can that partner actually bring something to you? And we all know that taking on like a lot of outside investment, like you said, so if all of a sudden you have a new master, a new boss, and you're not totally in control. So I really love that. And I think that's like a really valuable lesson that women can take from your journey. And congrats again. That's so awesome. I can only imagine doing that in another language was very difficult.
Yeah, I felt super proud.
So let's talk about your move to Mexico City. For the baddies that don't know, I've been here for about 4.5 years. I was born and raised between New York and London. So Mexico City is always a home and will be very near and dear to my heart. So what made you pick it as a home for yourself?
Well, I never saw myself being in Mexico at all in my life. I always considered maybe moving to Tel Aviv, like for my adult life, or I think also like dating, like Tel Aviv is always a great spot. But I had lived and grew up in Manhattan for like 26 years. That's a long time in that city. And I love my family and I love the hustle and bustle of New York City, especially when it comes to the work opportunities and the work ethic that you really absorb from that city. But I was looking for a change. That was the summer that I had met who's now my husband, Jack. I met, these like Mexico City kind of Jewish, cool, like entrepreneurial guys. And then I had a trip to Mexico City, a few months after that, just for fun, for the weekend. And I remember when the first time I came to Mexico City, I remember it being this feeling. I was like, wow, this is such a livable place. And I remember thinking it was a kind of cross between Tel Aviv and Cartagena. And I loved the cultural mix. Like it spoke to me. Like I loved the art and the vibe. And this was in 2018. Not so much English on the streets, although I mean a good amount, but it wasn't like it is now. And I just remember being like, wow, this is so cool. And when I met Jack, he showed me another side of this city that was a little more, like grounded and cultural and community oriented and Jewish. And it started to ring this bell of like, it really has a lot of the ingredients that I feel I need as a young woman.
Mhm.
So Jack and I started seeing each other back and forth. He came to New York once. We met in Cabo once when I was doing an art activation there. Then I came to Mexico City again. Then he came to New York. And so I started to see, you know, more of Mexico City, more of his life through his lens. And I said, you know what? Fuck it. Like, I'm going to rent my place out in Brooklyn. I'm going to quit my job. At the time, I was leading creative strategy at Hudson Yards with Daniel Arsham, doing this, like, I was helping with the creative team doing, the installation called Snark Park there. Like I had a really cool job. I loved the people I was working with. I loved the people I was reporting to, but something about New York just wasn't doing it for me. I was ready for a change. So rented my place out, packed up my stuff, came to Mexico City, and I said, you know what? I'm going to start just for the summer. I'm going to do this for the summer, see if it's good for me, see if it's cool. And also obviously, I mean, I moved directly in with Jack and we started dating while we moved in. Like we barely knew each other and we were like playing house, you know? And I think after about 8 months to a year, I was picking up the language. I had a few friends. I had some freelance. I was making my own money. I was liking living with Jack, and it just clicked with me. And in New York, I come from a community where everyone kind of knows me, and I was always this like creative black sheep-ish in like my community. So being here amongst all the black sheep from their communities, kind of like in this like hodgepodge chulent of like leftover people.
That is
I was like,
an accurate description.
yeah,
that's 11 out of 10. Well done, because that's literally what it is.
thank you.
That's what makes
literally
great. Absolutely. And so many creative people. So many creative people. I'm more like structured, process driven. It's what I do for my clients. It's how I live my life. But everyone around me is truly, deeply, like magnetically creative. And it's a really, really beautiful realm to live in.
Absolutely. And I think when you're around the right people and the right energy and the right conversations, it kind of manifests a reality within you. And then you start to become this person that you never thought maybe was there. So I think for me, I'm in the right place. I'm in the right place. I think I'm going through a transition now where I was so focused on building my life in Mexico and saying yes to everything and like learning more Spanish, making more friends, all about expansion and saying like inclusion of these new things. And now I'm in a place where I have to learn to say no, because, you know, energy is tight and time is tight and being an entrepreneur is tight. And if you want to, you know, detox your body and not, you know, drink and party or do whatever it is you want to do on the weekends, you have to start putting limits. And I now have friends all over and there's always events, and I love my community. I mean, the community that I'm in is just, it's a bunch of golden misfits. They're incredible people. But it's something I need to start kind of tailoring, which is not easy because I like to have a good time, but it's also important to, you know, focus on me as a human, as on my dog, on my business, on my team. So anyways, I think that answered your question.
I love that. It really did. And it's something Ebony and I have spoken about personally, but also on the podcast. It's, you know, when you're running these kind of top tier businesses and you have a life, you have a partner, you have pets, you're about to raise families, you know, you're doing all of these things, your time is really finite. And so being selective in the process of where you're putting your energy and the people you're putting your energy in with has really been a process that both Ebbs and I have gone through for 2024. And it's actually proven to be really lucrative for us because it's paid off in our businesses and in our family lives, as well as really refining and defining those really deep female connections we have. Because as Ebbs likes to say, there's not enough room for everyone at the table. And I love that. I love that.
It's so true.
Tell us And tell the baddies, if they're considering moving and going international, what would you say is your top 3 tips for them?
I would say my advice is first of all, I think everyone should live abroad and get away from their hometown. It's really, it's a character builder, and we have one life, and why not add that grit to our personality, DNA, life story? I would say one is wherever place you go, it's important to speak the language of that place, no matter what. If you go to Finland, if you go to Russia, if you go to Singapore, if you go to Thailand, I don't care. Speak the language. 1. 2 is, I would say in terms of your social life, you just need to say yes with no judgment for the first year. Just say yes. Say yes, say yes. No judgment. Oh, this seems like it's going to be weird. Just go, just go, just go, just go, just go. And I would say after that, if you have like 2 best friends, you're in a good spot and it feels more like home. And then 3, I would say in terms of your personal and financial independence, it's very important to not rely on someone like for your oxygen, but like it's important that you create your own independence. So like making your own money, making your own friends, making your own plans. Like if you move to Timbuktu and your boyfriend is from Timbuktu or your girlfriend is from Timbuktu, you can't just fully rely on like their friend group or their plans or their transportation. It's so important to like basically just be an independent human in terms of those 2 things, in terms of personal and financial, or like social and financial.
That's such important advice. Yeah.
Such good advice.
It's so, because otherwise it puts extra strain on your relationship. I could not imagine if, I'm relying on my social life through my partner or vice versa. It'd be like, it'd be suffocating. It's really nice to have the crossover, but not having kind of your own thing to do. Couldn't imagine a life like that. So great advice.
Yeah,
agree.
I did that to Adam in the first year and it was not good. So it's great. It's great advice. So I have learned so much more about you. I've learned so much from you. This has been such an amazing conversation. And I know we could sit here all day and talk, but we got some companies to build. Do you have any final messages for the baddies in terms of creating a life and business you love? It could be monetizing your passion, anything that you've learned from your journey that you want to share with women who are on a similar path.
Yeah, I would say 1 is be yourself. Don't try and be someone else. Like tell your own story, do the thing that you think is cool, and don't have that barometer inside of you that's like, wait, but like, what will they? No, it's not about they. It's about you. Be the person that you want to be. So that's 1. Don't try, but be. And then 2 is hire slow and fire fucking fast.
Oh yeah, we love that one here.
Oh, that was Esther's like number 1 tip from like our top 10 takeaways from our first year in business. And I thought that was
hire slow, fire fast. We love that here. Yeah,
especially in Mexico.
Oh, yeah,
We'll save that for another episode.
I remember having that conversation with Ebs when she was in Europe and we were talking about things. I was like, let her go now. Yeah, I agree.
That's awesome. So where can people find you online if they want to follow you or Fuega? Where should they go?
I would say just go to Fuega Lab, fuegalab.com or at Fuega Lab on Instagram. My personal username is up there in the profile bio. We're always looking to collaborate and bring in new ideas, new partnerships. If anyone has fun ideas or wants to do a pop-up in their city, or I don't know, expand any sort of experience that they're doing, I mean, I'm all for it. I'm very open right now. I'm lucky in that I'm able to be. And yeah, I would say just keep in touch. And I would also lend a hand and say, if anyone listened to the beginning part about pitch decks and they have an idea, or they have, I don't know, a cool business venture that they need help on selling creatively, I'm happy to set up calls. I do like consulting and help people, and would really love to just help other women like sell their cool shit. So
You're a rock star. Thank you so much for your time, babe. This has been amazing. Thank you for joining us.
And we'll put
thank you.
We'll put all of the links for your profiles and everything in the show notes so people can reach out to you.
And
Fabulous.
baddies, I'm off to have a baby. So this is the end of season 1, but we will be back at the start of next year. And we're so excited for season 2.